the factory that turns water into billions of dollars of revenue. So you want to own a Coca-Cola factory. Imagine spending tens of millions of dollars on a modern beverage plant, filling millions of bottles and cans every month, and selling one of the most recognizable drinks on earth. At first, the economics look almost unbeatable. The ingredients are cheap, the product is standardized, the machines are highly automated, and consumers already know exactly what they are buying. But there is a problem. The factory does not own the Coca-Cola brand. It operates inside the Coca-Cola system. The Coca-Cola company typically sells concentrates and syrups to authorized bottling partners. Those bottlers combine them with water and other ingredients, package the finished beverages, and distribute them to retailers. Most local bottling companies are independently owned and operated, so the real business is not simply manufacturing soda. It is buying the right to manufacture and distribute a global brand inside a territory, while paying for factories, trucks, warehouses, employees, packaging, energy, refrigeration, and thousands of daily deliveries. And that creates a very different economic question. How much money does a Coca-Cola bottling operation actually keep after turning concentrate into a finished product and moving it through the real world? To find out, we need to build the economics from the factory floor upward. Which factory are you buying? A Coca-Cola bottling plant is not simply a building with a few filling machines. A modern operation can include water treatment systems, syrup rooms, mixing equipment, carbonation systems, bottle or can lines, labeling and packaging equipment, quality control laboratories, warehouses, loading docks, refrigeration, fleet operations, and distribution infrastructure. And the factory is only one part of the business. The Coca-Cola system sold 33.8 billion unit cases of its products worldwide in 2025. Trademark Coca-Cola represented 47% of worldwide unit case volume. That scale explains the first economic advantage. A beverage factory becomes more efficient when expensive equipment can run continuously and fixed costs can be spread across millions of cases. The best Coca-Cola bottling plant is not necessarily the biggest plant. It is the plant that can keep its lines busy, move product quickly, minimize waste, and maintain enough distribution density to make every delivery economical. For our model, imagine an authorized bottling operation requiring approximately $75 million in initial capital. That would cover the plant, filling and packaging equipment, warehouse infrastructure, utilities, quality systems, fleet investments, installation, and startup working capital. The exact number could be dramatically different depending on territory, capacity, automation, land costs, package mix, and whether distribution assets are included. But the economics remain similar. You spend heavily before the first bottle reaches a customer, and then the real spending begins. The first $75 million. The factory itself is the first major investment. Imagine $45 million for production and packaging equipment, $12 million for buildings, utilities, and warehouse infrastructure, $8 million for installation, engineering, quality systems, and commissioning, and another $10 million for vehicles, inventory, working capital, and startup requirements. The plant is ready, but there is still no revenue. That creates a familiar manufacturing problem. Capital is tied up before it produces anything. If the owner expects an 8% economic return on $75 million of capital, the opportunity cost alone represents roughly $6 million per year. The owner may not write that $6 million as a separate check, but economically it still matters. A factory can appear profitable simply because the owner ignores the cost of the money trapped inside it. The machines may be producing cash, but the capital is still demanding a return. And now the factory has to keep operating. The factory that never stops. A bottling plant has fixed costs. Employees need salaries. Maintenance teams need to be available. Quality control laboratories need to operate. Security cannot disappear at night. The building needs insurance. Equipment needs inspections. IT systems need support. Warehouses need lighting, cooling, and management. And the distribution network has to keep moving. Imagine annual fixed operating costs of approximately $16 million. That includes management, permanent labor, security, insurance, maintenance staff, administration, quality systems, and other facility expenses. The factory could sell half as many cases next year, but most of those costs would not fall by half. The building would still exist. The machines would still need maintenance. The management team would still be required, and the distribution network would still need to function. This is the fixed cost trap. A beverage factory makes money when high volume spreads those fixed expenses across enormous numbers of cases. The cost inside a bottle. Now we start making Coca-Cola. The factory receives concentrate or syrup through the authorized Coca-Cola system. It adds treated water and, depending on the product, sweeteners and other ingredients. The beverage is mixed, carbonated, filled into bottles or cans, sealed, labeled, packed, palletized, and moved into the warehouse. The ingredients themselves are only part of the cost. The bottle costs money. The cap costs money. The label costs money. The cardboard or plastic packaging costs money. The aluminum can costs money. Electricity costs money. Water treatment costs money. Machine maintenance costs money. And every bottle has to pass through a quality control system. This is why a soft drink can be inexpensive to produce while the business surrounding it becomes capital intensive. Inside the bottle is not the expensive part. The expensive part is building a system capable of producing, packaging, transporting, cooling, selling, and replacing that bottle millions of times. The billion-bottle logistics problem. Imagine your factory produces 500 million bottles and cans per year. Making them is only half the job. They need to reach customers. That means trucks, drivers, fuel, warehouses, loading equipment, sales teams, merchandisers, retail relationships, coolers, and thousands of individual delivery points. A bottle sold from a factory warehouse is not the same thing as a bottle sold to a consumer. The product has to travel. And beverages are particularly expensive to move because you are transporting a lot of weight that has relatively low value per kilogram. Water is heavy. The bottle is heavy. The finished product takes up warehouse space. And refrigeration can add another layer of cost. Coca-Cola does not make money when a bottle leaves the filling line. It makes money when that bottle reaches a customer efficiently enough that the entire journey still leaves a margin. This is why distribution density matters. If a truck can deliver 500 cases across a concentrated urban route, the economics can be excellent. If the same truck drives hundreds of kilometers to deliver a small number of cases, transportation cost can destroy the margin. The retail margin problem. Now imagine the factory sells a case to a distributor or retailer. The factory does not receive the final retail price. The retailer needs a margin. The distributor may need a margin. Promotional programs can reduce the manufacturer's effective revenue. Discounts can be offered to large customers. Marketing support may be provided. And different channels can have completely different economics. A supermarket order is different from a restaurant. A vending machine is different from a convenience store. A fountain customer is different from a warehouse club. So the owner cannot simply calculate retail price minus manufacturing cost equals profit. The real equation is much more complicated. The customer may pay $2 for a drink. The bottling operation does not simply receive $2. Between the factory and the consumer, an entire economic chain is taking a share. The 500 million case question. Now let's build our simplified model. Imagine the bottling plant sells 500 million equivalent beverage units per year. Assume the average net revenue received by the bottling operation after discounts and trade effects is approximately $0.65 per unit. That produces roughly $325 million of annual revenue. Packaging, ingredients, production energy, direct labor, distribution costs, and other volume-related expenses. Suppose those average approximately $0.43 per unit. That creates roughly $215 million of variable cost. The remaining contribution is approximately $110 million. Now subtract the $16 million fixed factory cost. Then subtract another $55 million for sales, distribution infrastructure, administration, fleet operations, marketing support, and other operating expenses. That leaves approximately $39 million of operating profit before financing, taxes, and capital charges. On a $75 million investment, that looks spectacular. But there is a major assumption hiding inside the model. The factory has to sell 500 million units. What happens if it doesn't? The 50% utilization shock. Suppose demand falls. The factory sells only 250 million units. Variable costs fall because fewer products are made and delivered. But fixed costs do not disappear. The factory still needs management. The buildings still need insurance. The machines still need maintenance. The warehouse still exists. The fleet still requires investment. And the bottler still needs infrastructure to serve its territory. Revenue could fall from $325 million to roughly $162.5 million. Variable costs might fall from $215 million to around $107.5 million. But the fixed structure remains. That means the profit does not simply fall by 50%. It can fall much faster. This is the economics of beverage manufacturing. When demand falls, you lose the revenue attached to every bottle. But the factory keeps charging you for the capacity you built to produce those bottles. High utilization, therefore, becomes one of the most important numbers in the business. The water problem. A Coca-Cola bottling operation is fundamentally dependent on water. Water is an ingredient, but it is also part of the manufacturing process. The factory may require treatment systems, filtration, testing, wastewater management, and compliance infrastructure. Water availability and quality can therefore become business risks. The Coca-Cola Company itself identifies the availability and quality of water among factors affecting its beverage business, and the problem is local. A factory cannot simply assume that water economics are identical everywhere. A bottling operation in one region may have abundant water and inexpensive utilities. Another may face tighter restrictions, higher treatment costs, or infrastructure challenges. That means location is not just about cheap land. It is about securing the inputs required to keep the factory operating. The brand isn't yours. This may be the most important difference between owning a normal beverage factory and operating inside the Coca-Cola system. The Coca-Cola brand is not simply another ingredient. It is the asset that creates consumer demand. But the bottler does not independently own that brand. Coca-Cola's bottling agreements authorize bottlers to prepare, package, distribute, and sell company trademark beverages within defined territories and under specified conditions. Bottlers are generally required to purchase the relevant concentrates or syrups from Coca-Cola or authorized suppliers. That means the bottler receives something extremely valuable: access to a global brand. But that access comes with rules, territories, approved products, packaging requirements, purchasing obligations, quality standards, and contractual conditions. The bottler owns the factory, but the factory does not own the reason consumers want the product. That distinction changes the economics completely. The packaging shock. Now imagine aluminum prices rise sharply, or PET resin becomes more expensive, or energy prices increase. The bottler cannot necessarily pass the entire increase to consumers immediately. Retailers may resist price increases. Consumers may switch to cheaper alternatives. Competitors may keep prices stable, and promotional contracts may limit pricing flexibility. So a seemingly small increase in packaging cost can create a significant annual impact when multiplied across hundreds of millions of units. Imagine packaging-related costs increase by just 3 cents per unit. At 500 million units, That is $15 million of additional annual cost. The factory can be extremely efficient and still lose millions simply because its inputs became more expensive. The maintenance shock. Now imagine a high-speed filling line goes down. The repair costs $1.5 million. The line remains offline for 4 weeks. But the real cost is not just $1.5 million. The factory loses production. Orders may need to be shifted. Emergency logistics may be required. Employees are still being paid. The warehouse still operates. And customers may become frustrated if deliveries are delayed. A factory breakdown creates 3 bills: the repair bill, the lost production bill, and the bill for keeping the factory alive while the machine is not working. This is why serious bottling operations invest heavily in preventive maintenance. Downtime is not simply an engineering problem, it is a revenue problem. What happens when demand changes? Now imagine consumers change what they want. Maybe demand shifts away from sugary drinks. Maybe zero-sugar beverages grow faster. Maybe consumers prefer water, sports drinks, energy drinks, coffee, or other alternatives. The Coca-Cola system already operates across a broad portfolio of beverage categories rather than relying exclusively on trademark Coca-Cola. For a bottler, that creates both an opportunity and a problem. The opportunity is diversification. The problem is that every new product can require different packaging, ingredients, production settings, marketing, inventory, and distribution. A factory designed around one product can become inefficient if the market moves toward another. So flexibility has economic value. The ownership traps. The first trap is assuming the retail price is the bottler's revenue. It isn't. The second is ignoring packaging costs. The third is underestimating distribution. The fourth is building more capacity than the territory can support. The fifth is ignoring refrigeration and retail equipment. The sixth is treating water as an unlimited free input. The seventh is forgetting that the brand belongs to the Coca-Cola system, not simply to the bottling plant. The eighth is assuming demand will remain unchanged. The ninth is ignoring equipment depreciation. The 10th is treating every bottle sold as equally profitable. And the final trap is confusing enormous revenue with enormous profit. A bottler can move hundreds of millions of drinks and still have its margins squeezed by packaging, transportation, labor, energy, maintenance, and capital costs. The factory verdict. A strong owner begins with the territory. How many consumers are there? How many cases can realistically be sold? How far must those cases travel? What package sizes do consumers want? How much refrigeration is required? What does the retailer expect? And how much production capacity is actually necessary? Then they build the operation around those answers. They calculate cost per case. They calculate distribution cost per case. They measure line utilization. They track packaging waste. They reserve money for equipment replacement, and they stress test the business against higher aluminum, plastic, energy, labor, and transportation costs. Most importantly, they understand that the factory is only one part of the system. The real economics. The Coca-Cola business looks simple from the outside. Water, concentrate, carbonation, bottle, sell. But underneath that simple process is an enormous economic machine. The Coca-Cola company supplies the concentrates and manages the global brands. Bottling partners transform those concentrates into finished products. Factories provide production capacity. Warehouses provide inventory. Trucks provide distribution. Retailers provide access to consumers. And millions of individual purchases provide the revenue that keeps the system moving. In 2025, Coca-Cola reported $47.9 billion in net operating revenue, while its system sold 33.8 billion unit cases worldwide. Those numbers show the extraordinary scale of the system. But scale does not eliminate economics. A Coca-Cola factory does not make money because the drink is cheap. It makes money because millions of cheap drinks can be produced, distributed, and sold repeatedly through a system designed to make every step efficient. The machines create the bottles. The brand creates demand. The bottler creates local availability. The distribution network creates access. And utilization creates the economics. So is owning a Coca-Cola factory a license to print money? Not exactly. It is a capital-intensive bet on volume, territory, distribution, brand access, and operational efficiency. If the factory is large enough to spread its fixed costs, the territory has strong demand, and the distribution network remains efficient, the economics can be powerful. But if the plant is too large, the trucks travel too far, packaging costs explode, or demand falls, the same factory can become a very expensive collection of machines. The most valuable thing inside a Coca-Cola bottling plant is not the filling machine. It is the ability to keep that machine running, keep the trucks moving, and keep consumers reaching for another bottle tomorrow. That is the real economics of owning a Coca-Cola factory.